Right, hello. I am here with Monique Hammer from NOS, Executive Director, Sports Department, and she's just completed her 19th Olympics, and Sally Richardson, BBC Sport, Lead Director for the Olympic Games Paris 2024, who's been retired for less than a week. We'll hear more about her later on. But we're going to talk about the Olympics and your productions, respectively, for your broadcasters. So this was the first Olympics post-pandemic, with audiences and with that wonderful electric atmosphere that the host cities get. So how did you tap into that atmosphere? How did that affect your productions, compared to Tokyo?
Good afternoon, everybody. It's an absolute delight to be here, and I can recommend 4 days into my retirement. If you want to come and talk to me in the break, I can tell you all about that. It's fantastic so far. Look, I think the atmosphere at the Olympics spoke for itself, didn't it? We've seen the wonderful AV presentations that were held in the venues, which were amazing, and probably hadn't been seen before. And I remember doing the first programme where the swimming featured and all the lights went out, and we weren't aware that that was going to happen, and then suddenly this beautiful harp music began, and then the fabulous light show in the water. We hadn't planned for that, but Claire Balding, who was presenting it, as is her usual wont, went, "Oh, let's have a look at this." And so we did, and it was amazing, and it built that theatre. And a lot of the venues, which were iconic venues, and the presentations that they did pre-event starting, built that atmosphere for us, and then of course the crowds did as well. So we didn't have to work particularly hard in order to generate that atmosphere, but what we had to do was we had to have the confidence to let that speak for itself, and not be afraid not to splat everything with commentary or not to splat everything with presentation, but just actually to take a breath and say to people, to the viewers, you enjoy that for yourselves. So that was probably one of the easier jobs that we had.
It really came across on the broadcast as well.
Yeah.
And Monique?
Well, I totally agree with you. I think that the fact that it was close, Amsterdam, Paris is just 3 hours by train, that helped a lot too. But especially we didn't have to do anything because the commentators and our reporters just felt the breeze and everything. So they were enthusiastic on TV and radio and wherever. So we noticed after a couple of days, we don't have to tell them to be enthusiastic at all because they know and they are. So it was kind of a natural thing, to be honest. And well, like you said, it was so obvious that, you can talk to people and see people without a mouth cap. Wow.
Yes.
That was so good. So that helped.
And let's talk about your workflow, so how you actually produced it. So, Sally, you had your workflow split between the IBC and studio at Trocadero, which I went to. It was great. Everyone in my village thinks I was on TV, in Paris, and in Salford. So what was the balance between Paris and Salford, and how did it all kind of operate?
Yeah, well, we actually had an additional hub to that as well, which was our production office, which was a rental space that we took that was within walking distance of the Trocadero. So there were four areas that we worked from. Look, as a fully paid up member of the Directors' Union, and particularly somebody who cut her teeth on OBs, I, like previous speakers, also got palpitations when I see that thing that says the OB van is dead. Because for me, being on site is not just about the technology, but it's also about your interaction with your studio crews, with your technical team, with your presenters and with your reporters. So being remote, as I was and all of the gallery teams were for Paris 24 for the BBC, I understand and support a lot of the reasons behind that, but it does mean that you are divorced from that element of it.
Yeah.
But with the amazing team that we have, and we all work with amazing teams, don't we? And I'm certainly no exception. And you're only as good as the team that you have around you. They were amazing. So in all four hubs, we had fantastic people. Gallery teams, as I say, editing and graphics, were all based in Salford. Our studio was based in the Trocadero, and it was just that. It was the studio and obviously the technical backup and the home for RF cameras, which actually went out and about. And we had a virtual studio as well. All of that integration for the virtual studio, that was all run from Salford as well. And then we had our line switching operation that was based out at the IBC. And then the fourth element that I mentioned was actually the production office that we had that was more centrally located and within walking distance from the Trocadero. And that was where a lot of the production logistics were run from and managed from. And also when we had athletes visiting us in our studio, which we did on a nightly basis, that was the hub, you know, that created that experience there for them and then take them to the Trocadero studio. So, yeah, it was quite widespread. And by the very nature of it being in disparate locations, you know, you run the risk of there being a lot of disconnection.
Yeah.
Communication is absolutely key to make sure that that is a success. And I doubt there'd be anybody in this room who would say, you know, answer yes if the question was asked, is your communication absolutely 100% and doesn't need improving on? And we are no exception to that. So there are things that fall down between the cracks that might not if you were actually in the IBC and I could go up to somebody and say, you know, what about this? Or when is this person arriving? Or what are we covering today? But we have to adapt to those different ways of working, and I think we did, and reasonably successfully.
Reasonably, very successfully. And Monique, so your workflow was a triangle of operations from the IBC, your studio, Parc La Villette in Paris, and Hilversum. So talk us through that one.
Right. Actually, the triangle is more technically spoken, but to explain a little that in Hilversum we did all the live presentation, and in Parc La Villette in north of Paris, we had our studio for the evening, our evening show, and the radio for the whole day, radio studio. So, and in the IBC, the third leg, we had, of course, our transmission coming in, going out, and planning systems. Yeah. So the triangle is actually more technically wise that the connections we had with Telstar were from Paris, the POP point in Paris from OBS, to Parc La Villette, Hilversum, and the way back. And that was constantly moving around. So we could edit in the IBC, we could edit in the Parc La Villette and in Hilversum, and we all had the same transmission, video and audio lines, because the archive was in Hilversum, but we had all remote transmission, remote editing from all the points. And of course, editorial-wise, we had a coordinator in Hilversum, one in the IBC, one in Parc La Villette, and they were constantly talking to each other, what to do live, what to do in the evening show. Yeah. So it needed a lot of communication, and to be honest, it needed a lot of preparation. We've never, because of this system, which worked quite well, we've never been preparation so long with all the people involved, but that worked quite well. Because of, we spoke before in March, April, May, so many times with each other, how we're gonna do it. It worked quite smoothly during games time.
Brilliant, yes, yeah. All in the planning. And can you just talk us through quickly, because in Holland you have a very interesting in brackets, system on your public channels with multiple broadcasters vying for time over 3 channels. So how did you make that work with NOS trying to max out your Olympic coverage, but others also wanting to get their stuff on TV as well?
Yeah, well, let's keep it short. I can make it an hour or so, but let's keep it short. We have 3 public channels, and we have 12, 13 public broadcasters, companies. They are originally based from religion, left-wing, right-wing, political parties, but this was all invented back in the 60s and the 50s. It's still here, but it's not as prominent as it was in the 60s. But we have NOS, and NOS is actually on top of that and gets a lot of airtime. So beforehand, we talk to the board of directors of all those companies together, of the NPO as we call it. And then they say, of course, okay, you'll have the whole NPO one for the whole day, because most of the time we broadcast like 14, 15 hours a day, which is most of them live, and a summary program, evening show. So we have NPO 1, and we are allowed also, because of the rights with Warner Bros. Discovery, we are also allowed that if two teams or two Dutch competitors, sports athletes, play at the same time, we can use another channel. Right. So actually, we have all those other broadcasters too, but they allow us during games time that we take their transmission and their broadcasting.
And you have a streaming channel as well.
We also have one streaming channel, which we can also, we have one simultaneous for NPO 1, and we have a streaming channel which we can use if Dutch teams play at the same time.
Yeah.
So we switched, and we had a lot of information going back and forward where we were, to be honest. Were we on NPO 1? Did we do a team sport on NPO 3? Because the timings of a team sport is more editable, not edible. So that was very good communicated where we were at what time.
Great, yeah. And on the the sports themselves, what were the top sports for your respective markets? I guess it depends where your top athletes actually are sitting. But what are they, and how did you make sure you have strong coverage of those?
I would say that our main goal is, for a lot of countries, I think, our main goal is to cover the Dutch athletes. And of course, there's very much important highlights as the 100 meters and the marathon and all that. And so we do cover, of course, a lot of international athletes, but the Dutch are the ones we follow. So they are number one to program. And if they're playing at the same time, with what happened a couple of times, then we have those extra channels and streaming.
Yeah, just pop them over.
Yeah.
Cool. What about BBC? Are there particular sports?
It's the same for the BBC. I mean, I think it's probably quite obvious to tell where our priorities are when we have announced platforms at athletics. We have announced platform at swimming as well. Yeah. And in fact, our top two viewing figures, the highest viewing figures, one was for Keely Hodgkinson, and the second was for Adam Peaty winning his silver medal. So, that was great that we invested. That's not because we have any great insight or we know what the lottery numbers are going to be this weekend. It's where the viewers are. We don't have any great telepathy on that. But that's where we put our additional investment in terms of resources and obviously finances is with athletics and swimming. We then, the editorial is just exactly as you said, Monique, with NOS. It's the 100 meters, it's the athletics. People like Léon Marchand, we knew ahead of the games, didn't we, that he was actually going to be the poster boy for the Olympics, and the reception that he got and his performances absolutely, that bottomed that out. It was amazing. So when you have those stories emerging, you then also have an obligation, I think, to tell those stories, which again, like the atmospheres, they sort of tell themselves, don't they? You don't need to say an awful lot. We can all remember, when he was swimming and his head's bobbing up out of the water, and the whole of the spectators in the swimming arena were shouting for him. Those are really easy stories to tell. Another one for us, actually, which emerged, which was really important, was Cindy and Gamba, and we saw her then on the montage previously, which was a very important story, as a refugee athlete. And actually, interestingly, one of our runners who was with us in Salford, when she was boxing her first bout and won, he went absolutely crazy. Absolutely, he'd been very quiet for a number of days, very quiet, just going around his job, and then he went absolutely ballistic. And I said to him, are you, what's the story here, Mo? And he said, she's my sister.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
She settled in Bolton. He's from Bolton. She's not his biological sister, but they're very, very close, and they call each other brother and sister. Oh. That was extraordinary, just for the stories like that to come out. I just wanted to share that with you because it was a really special moment.
Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah. That's lovely. So it's all about balance between the blue ribbon sports and the home game sports and the real emotional stories that you find as well.
And being speculative. You almost have to be speculative as well. I mean, look at the climbing, and the surprise goal that we got there, which again was another extraordinary story. And sometimes you get to those places more by luck than judgment, let's be honest.
Yeah, at least cameras are everywhere. Yeah. And then how do you both deal with those last minute decisions and running order changes, you know, when you're, especially as things narrow down? I mean, at the beginning, you've got an overwhelming choice of things to put on and athletes doing different things from your home teams and key sports. And then as it narrows down, you've got to make decisions, and running orders change every evening just as you're going along. So how on earth do you cope with the stress of that? I mean, I'll be bored.
Well, I think that's the challenge of our job.
Yeah.
So we like it. It's kind of boring if you don't have those challenges. Of course, sailing is always very interesting, because that is a sport you can never count on. So because of the wind and everything. So that is particular. But in summer games, there's so many other sports to cover and to find out. I mean, we, as a small country, Holland, we had about 320 athletes. So there's always somebody running or swimming or cycling or playing hockey. So it's not as hard as it looks, I think. No.
Cool. Yeah. The years of experience talking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really? Yeah. I must be doing something wrong all of these years. I think the one thing that I would say I could guarantee would be said every night before we went into the gallery, not just for Paris, but actually for every Olympics that I've worked on, or every major event, is when it comes to sort of transmission minus an hour, and the production coordinator says, can we print the running order, ready to send? And obviously we had to go earlier in Paris because we're sending electronically to the studio, etc. And the phrase that always comes out is, you may as well print because it's actually not going to be followed. We're just going to rip it up as soon as we get in the gallery anyway. And that is mostly true. But you have a framework, don't you, that you work to and you try and stick to. And then, like you say, Monique, the enjoyment is that actually something happens and you have to react quickly to it. And the years of experience help you to cope with that. But also the team around you.
Yeah.
Knowing what to do and what's expected of them, and knowing that at those particular moments in a live programme scenario, there are only two voices that should be heard. One is the director and the second is the editor. Mm-hmm. And then everybody else just needs to just listen, because it's at that point where the aforementioned communication skill absolutely is essential. Yes. For everybody.
Yeah.
For everybody. So, yeah, it's exciting. At times, sometimes it's very frightening, but what a thrill when you pull it off.
Yeah, and then collapse at the end kind of thing. And on thrills and stuff, what was the most nerve-wracking thing that happened on the production for you? I heard there was a little...
For me, it was, I was actually just prepping to go, to get into the gallery. It was one afternoon, we were on canoe slalom, and there was another, the gallery team ahead of me was in there. We were live on air. Hazel Irvin was presenting from Paris. We were on canoe slalom, and there was an alarm, a fire alarm at Media City in Salford. And we all had to evacuate. So I ran into the gallery just to hear the editor saying, we'll be back with you when we can, Hazel. We've all just got to clear out, okay? No problem. And everybody had to clear out. That was it. There was no, we're live on air, we've got to stay. So we all left the building. We gathered in the piazza outside Media City, and there was somebody there with a lollipop which said live transmission, so we all went to that. We then got up the BBC One feed on a phone. We then got up the running order for the start list for the canoeing, and worked out that actually we had about 17 minutes left on the canoe slalom event. So we then had to start working out, what do we do if the canoe slalom event finishes, which, by the way, we were on host broadcast commentary for that. We didn't have our own BBC commentators. What happens then?
Yeah.
So we worked out what we would have to do, which would be that actually Paris would have to speak to Network Control 1, who were running BBC One at the time, and get them to make a hot switch to another event of our choosing, but it would be very eggy, sound-wise and pictures-wise, because it would just be a hot cut. There's no continuity. There's no, well, that was that, and this is this. We're joining our commentary team of Barty, crashing out of you, outgoing commentary, crashing into the commentary that was joining. Anyway, so about 10 minutes left of the canoe slalom, suddenly the firemen came out of Key House, and we were all, any news? Should be all right. 5 minutes later, right, you can go back into the building. So we got back into the building, and of course you can't use a lift, can you? And we're on the 3rd floor, and so everybody's legging it up the stairs. We get back into the gallery. Hi Hazel, so we're on the last run going down the canoe slalom, so at the end of this you'll be picking up in vision, and then we'll be handing to whatever it was, and relax. So we had spent 15 minutes absolutely, eyeballs out, what the hell are we going to do? Yeah. Nobody at home knew anything about it. Yeah. That was a first. That's never happened to me before, and to a lot of people who were there. It was interesting, but not one I'd want to repeat.
No, well, luckily you don't have to now, do you? Phew. Was there anything like that for you?
No, not at all. No, not at all. Our editorial challenge was that the basketball 3x3 Dutch team won the gold medal, and that was pretty unexpected. So the hype was there, like we're winning, amazing. And then actually after, it took, I think, an hour or something before they could give an interview. So that was a challenge, like we want to do that interview live because it was such a great medal. But it was very difficult because we never knew. So that was an hour of what are we going to do? So, it was exciting, but we made it. But it wasn't something like yours.
And then now let's look to the future with you, Monique. We've got Milano Cortina coming up in just 2 years with its little ferret-shaped mascots. So what are going to be the challenges for, I like the mascots, for NOS as public service broadcasters in covering that one? It's going to be a bit different to Paris.
Yes, totally different from Paris. It also feels that Paris was so big, nice and big, and Winter Games are smaller, nice and smaller, very much smaller for us, because we won't be much in the mountains. We don't have that many skiers. Well, one, Martin Hirscher, the Austrian one, is skiing for us. And we do have some, we did it, Dutch mother. Yeah. But other than that, we do have some snowboarders, and eventually maybe a bobsleigh team or maybe skeleton, but very few in the mountains. So our home base will be Milano, and the speed skating and the short track will be our second home, to be honest. The challenge will be, as it is with Winter Games, what are you going to do? What are you going to broadcast when there's no speed skating or short track on air? That is the thing. Like, we still want to do 8 or 10 hours live broadcasting, but it's always the question for us. Are we going to watch 2 hours of biathlon when there's no Dutch competitor? Yeah. It's only shown on Dutch TV once in the 4 years. We never ever do biathlon or cross country. Sorry about that. But so that will be the difficulty. Yeah. And then what Scott already said, of course, the logistics. Like, if you want a reporter in the mountains, okay, you got him in Bormio, and it's no way that he's going to be the same day in Cortina because it's a 5-hour drive. Yeah. Good luck. So that will be really challenging. Yeah. But other than that, we're looking forward to it. Yeah.
Good. So am I. Yeah, it's going to be excellent. Okay, thank you very much, both of you. Let's have a round of applause for Sally and Monique.